All right, we're live.
Hey, what's up? This is Flex Wheeler on Flex for Life and my co-host Greg. Today we're just going to discuss like the pros and cons of guys and girls getting on sports technology drugs at a young age. I think it's really an epidemic now. I know Greg, like back when I was in high school, I never heard of, quote unquote steroids or anything like that. But and obviously it wasn't, internet and stuff like that. But um, I really think a lot of these kids, obviously, it's pressure, right? It's pressure. I've gotten contacted by parents wanting me to put their kids on cycles and stuff like that, which was astonishing. And it's interesting because back in our time, we didn't take a lot. I wasn't known for taking a lot. I remember getting teased by many different athletes, calling, why do you still taking this candy? I'm like, what do you mean candy? You're not taking no grown people stuff. And I'm like, but it's working, right? So I think, like I said before, um, bodybuilding is a sport that absolutely anyone can do. Anyone. Anyone can go play soccer. Anyone can play football. Anyone can play baseball. Anyone can run track because it's a competition. But bodybuilding, you can actually work out and achieve a physique and be looked upon as a bodybuilder. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, that was candy. Then 1993 was kind of that's a candy year then, right? I mean, the Iron Man, the Arnold,
Yeah,
and second the Olympia. They
yeah,
ate your candy. But
yeah,
no, yeah, that's a rough one because you and I both have kids that we're lucky. We're in a smaller percentage of being parents that have kids that are actually competing at a certain level that actually could compete at the collegiate and beyond level. So most kids can't. So the
yeah,
pressure becomes more to the point where my twins this year. I think the little bit of the pressure got to them. They decided not to do travel hockey this year because it was becoming too much
mm,
and it was affecting everyday life. And
mm,
um, I was going back and forth on that one, but no, I mean it's especially now with how much colleges are, and if it's a spot between not making a college team and making a college team versus making a college team and getting a scholarship and not having to pay $20,000, $30,000 a year for tuition.
yeah,
That's a lot of pressure.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think there's like so obviously I started when I was young. I started when I was 19 years old. Um, it's something that I regret, but if you look at my history of what I achieved, that was a good gamble for me. But then again, how many Flex Wheelers are there going to be? How many Kevin LeBrons or Sean Rays or Chris Cormiers or Dorian Yates are there going to be? There's only a certain amount of Olympias, but how many actual professional athletes they are? So, that's a very small percentage. And just like having great genetics and have your daughter Nearly, that we sponsored. I know literally she didn't get certain fights, because they thought she was on gear. And I mean, she
Pull her
had
up
to
real
actually
quick.
fight women. There you have it. That's Nearly. How old was she here?
19.
19 years old. And literally, she had to start fighting grown women because nobody in her category would fight her. And she still couldn't get any fights. And same thing with Darius. I mean, when he got in high school and he was playing football, I said, listen, son, they're always going to suspect that you're taking drugs, always, no matter what. And he's like, why? And I go, look who your dad is. They're going to think, hey, man, he knows the best things to take. He's going to be able to help his son pass any tests. And a lot of people actually thought he did. I remember we're actually at a party when he was not even 2 years old, and it was at Will Smith's house, and Damian Wayans and all of them were there and their family. And Darius was just such like this Buddha, looking baby and everything. And I remember them saying, man, I can't believe you got your kid on gear already. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And he goes, look at him. And I'm like, dude, are you serious right now? And they're like, look at him. I'm like, my brain like exploded. Like, really? How could you? And then, you have other situations where it makes you wonder. I remember that one kid, you probably remember him. He was from another country, but he did karate. He was really muscular. He's really, really young kid. had, triceps and biceps and
in the
just cut.
UFC?
Yeah. No. He didn't. No, he was young, like 10 years old, like
Oh,
6 years
oh,
old.
that young Hercules kid.
Yes, yes,
Or-
yes, yes. And I know he's done videos now where he's talked about what he did and stuff like that. So, you know, um, I think you just need to be wise about what you do. I don't want to be a hypocrite, but like I said, if I can go back in time, I would change things. But then again, yeah, I had an okay career. So, I know a lot of people will think, well, you did it, how come I can't?
Well, you had a Hall of Fame career, so don't say it was just okay. But I mean, just look at it this way: how many guys were when you won your pro card? Were you a light heavy or heavy?
I was a light heavy.
How many guys were just in
Oh
the
no,
light
no, I was
heavy?
a heavyweight. I was
Or,
a
well,
heavyweight.
just
Yeah.
in the heavyweight category, how many guys entered into the USA just heavyweights that year you got your pro card?
One.
How many
Back then.
entered?
Oh, entered. Oh God. I think it was like 16 or so on stage. Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then light heavy was probably
It was
the middleweight
stacked. Yeah.
class probably
Light heavy
double that,
was
right?
even more stacked. Yeah. Yeah. It was probably over 200 guys in the competition total. And
Now that
remember
year,
back
just the
then,
overall. Back when you got your pro card, only the overall
exactly,
DUSAs. Okay,
exactly over the overall. So you had to defeat the light heavyweight and middleweight and all that stuff. So, and that's the way it was for years. I
right.
mean, only the nationals were the class winners awarded a pro card, but only at the USA or the North America or the
Yeah,
nationals. So it was only a few pros a year.
right. I know that same with them when Chrissy won her pro card, it was only the overalls.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's so if you think about that, just who do you remember who were the other pro card winners your year that 93?
I don't.
So
I
none of
don't.
them were Olympia winners either, is what I'm saying, or
Yeah.
Arnold winners.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that's I mean, you say that, and I always put this in perspective, and that's where I feel like you and I have been lucky in our sports careers because we've been able to get to a certain level. But how many guys and girls try things out, they don't get to that level or don't even get a pro card. The ones
Yeah.
who get a pro card, that I mean, the year my wife won her pro card in 2004, it was like that. It was only the overall winners, but and people knew who she was, but she got one top five her entire career.
Yeah. I mean, and I remember, Chrissy, before you even had met her, she had competed just, I don't know for how long before she even started doing well. But, I really think, also the parents need to be involved. One thing I've always told Darius, is like, listen, son, if I ever catch you taking any drugs, I'm putting you in a hospital. And I stood on that. And I said, once you get of age and you can make your own decisions, you're a grown man, you can do what you want to do. But, I was really strict about that. And, I think it's not just bodybuilding. I mean, I remember back when I was competing, I won't say the groups, but a lot of boy bands back then were actually taking things. And it was more people taking sports technology drugs than it was competitors, because guys figured out that it can make you ultra aggressive and a good fighter. A lot of guys just wanted to train to have a bar body or a
Yeah.
beach body, or they trained for the aggression and they took things for the aggression of it, or for the sexual enhancement reasons and stuff like that. So it would it would be astonishing if you knew how many people in your gym that were on sports technology drugs that never competed or never wanted to, and it's just not our drugs. I mean, our sport. I remember having a conversation. It was just a bunch of athletes. When you when you're at an elite level, you get to meet and talk to other elite athletes. It's just a respect. And I was talking to this one guy who actually was competing in the Wimbledon, and we were talking about different things. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys do? He's like, yeah, of course, Flex. I'm like, how? Why? And he goes, think about it. How is tennis won? Speed, accuracy, and endurance. And I was like, huh. And immediately I thought of the drugs that would help enhance that. I mean,
Yeah.
even a one sport in the Olympics where you run, you swim, you shoot, and all that stuff, they do. And I was like, I don't get it. Why? And he goes, to slow the heartbeat down and concentration and endurance and speed. So I think it's just truly an epidemic, and more people are utilizing than actually athletes. There's more people out there that will never walk on any stage or compete in any sport, and that's why I think it's a sad situation. Listen, if you just really believe in yourself, and hopefully you get some good advice, and you think that you have a future in a sport, it's hard pressed for me to say that, you don't take that gamble and go for it, but again, it's that what if, like I said, how many flex wheelers it is out there. And I remember, I've never talked about the cycles that I did or anything like that, because I'm aware of how powerful my voice is. And if I said I did this, then you're going to have kids immediately running out there and taking the things that I did, thinking that they're going to have the same response.
Yeah.
And I would get that comment, that question all around the world. I'm like, listen, you're not going to be able to achieve what I did unless you figure out some weird way of going back and being born by my mother and father, which is
Yeah.
impossible. It's not going to happen.
Yes. I mean, I know they did a study, the CDC did a study about 10, 15 years ago, that the majority of people that are taking black market performance enhancers are your average Joe or Jane that just wants to look better when they take their clothes off.
Yeah.
And that's fully understandable. I know, just from a cost perspective, TRT is very prevalent, hormone replacement. And we actually
and that's different. That's now,
right.
we're talking
But the
about
price is different though, right? Because
yeah,
you're talking hundreds of dollars versus you might be able to get a vial of testosterone from the black market source that is actually clean or reputable. That's $40, $50.
Yeah. And I won't say the doctors that worked with us back in my time, they all had to do time and they got caught, but they took care of us. They took care of movie stars. I mean, I knew movie stars that were taking certain things, for a look and all that stuff, but it was under a doctor's supervision, and we would go get blood work done. And literally I can pull up blood work, from me back when I was like 18 years old, and I can then look at the changes of my different panels and stuff like that. But like you said, now the epidemic is also the majority of people out there taking gear, they're not getting it from a pharmaceutical source.
Right.
They're getting it from some over the market or somebody, I mean, yeah, we used to drive across the border and go into Mexico, but we would go into a pharmaceutical, store, and we
Right.
could buy those things. So that's the other scary part now. And I remember towards the end of my career, I started hearing about people making drugs in their apartment, in their in their bathtubs and stuff like that, and then a lot of infections. But you just got to be careful what source are you getting it from, and then
Yeah.
understanding if it's really what grade as it is. I mean, a lot of times I know certain guys have took black market, sports technology drugs, and had it test, and it came back that it wasn't what they thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, you have a story of one of your high level former athletes getting it from a very high level athlete, and it was all fake.
Yeah, and
Not
that's
naming any
happened a
names,
lot.
by the way.
Yeah, no, that's happened a lot, even to professionals. You hear somebody who has a hookup and they've been taking it for a long time, and they're like, okay, well, I'll get it from him. It
Yeah.
happens a lot more in other countries. I remember this one athlete that contacted me from Japan and wanted to work with me, and I was like, okay, go get a blood work. Give me your history of what you took and amounts. And I think I even remember sending you the amounts that he was taking a long time ago.
Oh,
And
that's right.
I was like blown. I was like, it's not possible that this guy is taking this much gear, period, and still
Just a
being
pin cushion.
alive, and he didn't have that great of a build. And I was like, listen, something's wrong. You're not taking as much, He's like, no, I do. This is what I take. And I'm like, well, I'd be hard pressed to believe that what you're taking is real, because literally the amounts that you're taking, you'd be dead by now, So he went back and found out that for years he had been taking, supplements that, sports technology drugs that wasn't real.
Just all sterile oil, probably.
Yeah, sesame seed oil and stuff like that. And you have a lot of people who don't talk about it, but they get these cysts or these infections from the source that you're buying. So again, we didn't have it back then. It was out there. We called it exotic. Oh, you got that exotic stuff, which in other words, we're saying that phony. You found that phony stuff, but a lot of our stuff was just it was purely real. It was from pharmaceutical sources.
Right. I know the pressure is there because I know that, you brought up boy bands. I know actors. I mean, as soon as we started making superhero movies, I'm sure that kind of bumped up the need. Because I mean, not going to name names, but you can't look like a Norse god or a super soldier or a Kryptonian without. I know you got to work out. I mean, we're not going to say you can just inject yourself to look a different way, but to look a certain way, or like a mutant with claws coming out of his hands, you gotta. I would assume there was some sports technology involved there, but at the same time, with the way that college educations are becoming more and more expensive, and we're putting all this pressure on kids to not just go to college, but go to a good college and earn that degree. When if you go out of state or even in state right now, it's tens of thousands of dollars a year. And I know you've been contacted by quite a few parents of potential collegiate athletes.
Yeah, yeah. As young as in their early teens, I'm talking 13, 14 years old.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that part.
yeah, and I just literally stared at them like, you
They haven't
really
got through
put your,
puberty yet.
yeah. And I'm like, you really put your kid on this? And he's like, Flex, it's so competitive. All the kids out there are doing it. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean? He goes, all the kids are out there. I just want my son, to have a fair shot here. And I was like, you got to understand the consequences of them starting this early. I'm like, if they can't get down now, their hormones are at raging right now. This is the time, for them to excel with their natural hormones, but it is a lot of pressure out there. And, a lot of parents, I mean, let's go further. I remember hearing whispers. I used to, be on the coaching staff of my son's football team, Sobrato. We give a shout out to Sobrato High School and Morgan Hill.
No.
But I remember starting to hear whispers of parents who actually held their kids back, in junior high. And I remember Darius even like being upset when like, why did you hold me back? And I'm like, what? He goes, all the kids were held back, because he graduated when he was 17, like I did. So, kids, parents would hold him back. And I remember talking to a few parents and are like, man, this is my retirement, strategy here. This is my investment. And I would even joke, and say Darius is my investment strategy here. This is gonna, he's gonna take care of me when I get older. But again, there is truly it's truly a difference between having natural great genetics versus not. My brother Robert Gibbs was natural. I don't know if, geez, up until he was in his late 30s. And he looked absolutely amazing. And I remember people always thinking that he was on something, and I would tell him he's not. And they go, why don't you? And I remember, me and him having a conversation, and I was like, Robert, have you ever thought of? And he goes, I've just been waiting for you. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I've just been waiting for you to let me know that it's okay. And I'm like, really? That's what you've been waiting for? And once, he started competing, it was obviously a grave difference. You look at people like Ronnie Coleman, who was known to actually turn pro naturally. You look at Kai Green, who was known to compete his whole career, without being on gear, and then when he started. And these guys that built such an amazing baseline and tapped into their natural growth potential fully before they ever started. That's, I think, the way to go. Just go as absolutely far as you can with all the greatest training, dedication, perseverance, discipline, and then make that decision, because you should be close enough, or you should be a professional already to be able to make that decision, instead of starting at such a freaking early age in your
Junior
teens.
high school.
Yeah, I mean, No, this is not even junior high school at 13, right? This is,
I think that's starting junior high for
oh, really? At
the
13?
seventh grade. Yeah, seventh grade.
No, no, that's middle school.
Yeah, junior high. Oh, we call them different things, maybe.
Oh, really? Yeah. Now, junior high. No, now that's middle school. So,
Yeah,
but
seventh, eighth grade.
yeah, yeah. So, it's sad, and I know, especially like the women is different. Men are intaking male hormones, to achieve these things, or it
Right.
turns into testosterone. For women, it's absolutely different because I've talked to so many pro women, or women who wanted to turn pro, and I would always, first thing they would say is, I haven't changed. I haven't changed that much. And I'm like, really? And I was like, okay, I want you to go back and I want you to get a picture of when you first started, and then take that picture and match it up against what you look like now. And every one of them came back to me and was like, oh my God. And I was like, the problem is you see yourself every day. So you don't see those changes. And you live in a world of, I mean, just a world of physical fitness, and looking like like a demigod. That's such a
Yeah.
small percentage of the world. And even myself, I'm still locked into that mind frame where I don't think I look great, but around normal people are like, wow, man, you're used. And I'm like, you have no idea what I used to
Oh,
look like before. Um, there's a misconception, but again, for women, I remember, like, someone will, like, I only take a little bit, and I'm like, but you understand what a little bit is. Okay, that's like a man saying, I only take a little bit of progesterone a day. So over time, what's going to happen to a man taking progesterone a little
right.
bit over time? They're going to have these changes. So for women, it's even worse, because they're going to have these changes even on smallest amounts. You're actually introducing male hormones into your body. And a lot of women, the changes that they have physiologically are irreversible.
Yeah.
I remember, I was friends with a lot of Miss Olympias, and I won't say this one Miss Olympia, but I remember her telling me, um, that she loved the way she looked, 10 weeks out. She looked like a pure athlete, but she got upset because she knew that wasn't a look that was going to win. And as she went deeper and deeper, she got unhappy about the way she looked, but she actually won. So she knew that was a winning look. Another Miss Olympia, we were at a steakhouse, and she went into the bathroom and she came out just crying because women were accusing her of being a man in that bathroom. But again, we live in this world, we're embraced. We go to the gym, we're around competitors, we're around other pro athletes who look like, phenomenon. So we're locked in, and we think this world is actually a reality, when actually it's a very, very small percent of people who walk around and look like that.
Yeah. Well, you have to tell me. I just went to my high school reunion this weekend, so
How was that?
it was different because I know we had name tags made with our graduation pictures on it, and the majority of it was, I remember this picture. I don't remember this, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was. But I remember you telling me a story about another Olympia winner. Again, we're not naming names, but she asked you to kind of take a look at her cycle. And I remember you saying that you were just absolutely dumbfounded about what she was put on by a very well-known coach also.
Yeah.
I think you
No,
said it was almost as much as you did.
she was literally taking more than I did in my prime. And I've talked to a lot of women, um, since I retired, and they would tell me their cycles, and I'm like, that's insane. I didn't even take those amounts. But again, I think a lot of us pick the right sport. If you look at my history, I picked the right sport.
Yeah.
Dorian Yates picked the right sport. Lee Haney picked the right sports. Chris Cormier, Nasser El somebody, Kevin LeBron, we all picked the right sport. But you also could say that probably any of us would be great athletes in any sport that we actually picked. But you also just have to be wise in picking the right sport. I mean, other than Spud Webb, you're not going to get away with that, being for
No.
something. And and being able to be in the NBA. You can't be 7'8" and be a professional skateboarder. It's just probably chances are it's not going to happen. And I remember meeting kids that based on their physical physique, I'd say to some kids like, geez, man, you should be sleeping with a basketball, or you should be sleeping with a football. And you have to be wise about that. And unfortunately, our sport allows anyone to be able to come into that world and compete. And after years of being around these elite athletes, you start believing that you look this way, and you start taking a little bit further. And I think that's where the mistake lies. Anyone should be able to do our sport, but that doesn't mean you belong on stage.
Right.
It could just mean that, hey man, you're just out there to look the best that you can. And listen, at the end of the day, calisthenics resistance training is the best training absolutely for anyone at any age.
Mhm.
It is truly the fountain of youth. As we get older, we lose our muscle mass, we lose our flexibility, we start creeping over, we start being hunched over. Those things don't happen. I just seen a video of this lady. I think she was like 80 something years old, and she was a world powerlifter.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and I was like, geez, just some muscularity on her, but that's years and years and years and years and years of training. But look at her versus another woman who can, be her age, who's probably in a wheelchair or whatever.
Yeah. Or a walker.
So yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I think that's the biggest issue. And I know a lot of our business is built around social media, but a lot of people compare themselves to what's on social media. And I think that's one of the issues. I know what we wanted to discuss today was weighing the pros and cons of, sports performance drugs. And I know I get it, right? I mean, I remember when the Mitchell report came out, it was 20 years ago, the baseball Mitchell report came out now. But a lot of the names on there were not, it wasn't the Barry Bonds and the Ken Griffey Juniors, even though they didn't get listed. But it was like FP Santangelos. I mean, it was guys who were fighting for roster spots on baseball clubs. They had been drafted out of high school, so they have no education past high school. I remember FP talked about this, how he kept getting injured, so he started using growth hormone to aid in his recovery process. And he's like, I can't do anything else. I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree. I don't have a trade. I played baseball. So he was like, it's a matter of, do I do this knowing it's illegal, but I can keep the job where I keep a roof over my family's head and food on the table because I have no other options, but I can go wait tables maybe.
yeah.
So
And
there's,
you look at that, man. And regardless of what sport, a lot of pro athletes are locked into that
yeah,
mindset that they have that high pressure that they have to produce. But you for myself, I'm thinking that's an okay gamble because he is a professional.
yeah,
He is being able to compete. He is at that level. And I remember this movie, and I can't remember what football player it was made after, but he was about to retire. There's a there was a percentage of tackles and stuff like that he needed to perform to get a bonus. And I remember he got severely injured, and it was a shot that the doctor was going to give him, and they were
mm,
questioning about it, and he was like, "Give it to me." And he's like, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Give it to me. Listen, this is my life. I'm about to retire. I need to be able to perform to get this bonus." I can't remember the movie, and I can't remember the athlete that it was made after, but that is the situation. And I think that's, when you mention like the internet, yeah, that's a driving force for a lot of these kids, because you even have a lot of kids who are claiming to be natty and they're not, and I don't get it. I just, when I was an actor, I competed for years naturally. I didn't go around and beating my chest that I was a natty, so
marketing tool
um,
these days.
so you gotta wonder, why is a person doing that? For whatever reason, why are you putting guys down who do use? Are you like trying to cover up and hide something? That's like me. I don't walk around and beat my chest that I'm a man. I'm a man, through in and throughout. I don't have to act it or perform a certain way in front of anybody. I know that I am. and I'm comfortable at it. I don't have to have an alter ego, which I used to, my flex alter ego when I was younger. But
The
um,
Flex Wheeler.
yeah, yeah, the other flex Wheeler, the bad guy. But it is a lot of pressure, and just this whole generation, there's a lot of pressure, and I think a lot of that comes from just the internet. People living phony lives, renting houses or cars, and doing videos and
No.
content. I know there's like an epidemic with girls getting body augmentations and stuff like that, because you have all these women who are making money on the internet based on their photos, and that's causing a lot of other women to think, okay, I can go that route. So
Yeah.
the internet is a double-headed sword. It cuts in a great way of being able to market, being able to be seen. You don't have to be that well known. Like back in our days, you had to be somebody to be in a magazine,
Yeah.
where you don't now. You can create your own atmosphere on the internet. But then again, on the other way, you can lie tremendously. I'm a huge car fanatic. Used to go to car shows and drag races and all that stuff. And I remember when, Facebook first came out, you had a lot of people that would steal someone else's content and photos and say, hey, I created these cars. And then, because they have such a marketing presence, you go to their car shop and your car end up getting jacked all up, so yeah.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me is just the pressure, like you talked about, 13-year-olds and parents thinking about it. I just looking it up. There's currently, in the last census, they said there's 8.26 million high school student athletes in the country currently, and on average, 7% of those make it to the next level in college.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's only 500,000 out of those 8.26 million. That's out of 340 million U.S. Americans in general.
yeah. And
So
it's
just
even less when you
yeah, and
talk
then
about those turning pro.
yeah, that's like 1% of those people. So I mean, if you look at it, going from high school to college, the best, some of the guys and girls who were the best all state athletes in your sport are bench warmers at the college level, right?
Yeah,
And then you take it from that level, the ones who make it to I mean, you have all conference players, all Americans that don't make it to the next level.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I know she's become a big name now, but Riley Gaines, who did come in fifth, I'm not going to go into the whole transgender thing and her hubbub, but she came in fifth at nationals, and she was 80th at the Olympic trials. Basically, she didn't get a look. That's how big a
mm,
jump it was.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a small drop in a huge pool of people who are able to make it, and that's why I'm just like,
Is it worth it?
is the gamble worth it? And then if you turn pro, are you good enough where you're going to make some money, or are
Yeah,
you just going to be passed to another team and put off? So
right. Unfortunately, you got the stories like, I mean, Jose Canseco came out and said himself, he's like, if I didn't juice, I don't know if I would even made the major leagues, let alone
yeah,
been one of the
yeah,
Bash brothers.
yeah. And I mean, you remember he was one of the biggest mouths that was bashing everybody else
Yeah.
that were taken, yet he was actually really taken too. So again, you got to be careful of these people who are claiming natty and being big mouths, because they might be the biggest users out there. And the thing about it is, you can't always tell based on a person the way they looks, because there are drugs out there that will, if you're a cyclist, it'll slow your heartbeat down. That's the number one thing that cyclists do, is they take certain drugs that actually slows their heartbeat down so that they can ride at a high level. There's certain drugs that just steadies your nerves. There's drugs that increase your muscle mass. There's a number. There's drugs that increase your aggression if you're a fighter. There's a drug out there that will meet whatever your requirement is. It's just, if I want to talk about our sport, we walk that walk and we look that look, so we're always targeted, but we're not the only sport. There's every sport in the world. I remember back as a kid being ignorant, now knowing, but back as a kid, listening like the NFL games, because my father's like a massive football fan, and he always watched NFL. Just the announcers talking about, yeah, they're just, averaging 290 pounds, or 27
Yeah.
inch necks, and they're just good old country fed boys. Now knowing like, no, they're not. These
Yeah.
guys were all on
Well, they
sauce back
probably
then.
were, but it's not just it.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't just that at all.
Well, I mean,
So
it's every competition. I remember when it's not Mark Bell was made Bigger, Stronger, Faster, the
yeah, yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah,
You know, when he interviewed people auditioning for symphony positions in you know, tubas and stuff, and they were taking beta blockers to calm their nerves. And he said and he said in their minds, yes, that would be a performance enhancer.
yeah. Of course, it's
And
enhancing their
then he interviewed
performance.
the porn actors, and they said, would you consider Viagra a performance enhancer for what you do?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think I forgot the doctor's name, but the one thing he said that was very profound to me was, let's say if I had this one drug that had the same known and unknown side effects of steroids, but it kept a roof over your family. It put food on your table. It paid your bills and allowed your kids to go to school. He said, "Would you take it?" And then he just sat back and smiled.
Listen, you know, doctors are amazing, right? The real ones, they're absolutely amazing. They're out there saving lives. But I've always heard of whispers of the different type of drugs that they have to take to be able to stay awake, to be able to perform a surgery for a certain amount of time. You know, I've always heard whispers of that. I forgot what it is when they're working in hospitals, but they're not actually being paid. It's part of their education. What is it called?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I know they
forgot.
do a lot of work where it's becoming a doctor is not easy, whether you're a good one or a
Yeah,
bad one.
yeah. But um, when when I when my body shut down in 2003, and I got rushed to the hospital, and they told me my kidneys had failed, and every time I ever been to a doctor, I've always been brutally honest. This is what I do. This is what I take. This is who I am. And I remember telling him, and he looked at me. He's like, how could you do this, that, and other? And I said, Doc, listen, I know what you guys have to do to be able to achieve your jobs. And he looked at me and he's like, you're right. I'm just going
Mhm.
to take care of you and get you in the best shape,
It's all
possible. But
perspective.
yeah, but and let's go wider than just sports technology drugs. Let's talk about cocaine. Let's talk about ecstasy. And a lot of times those drugs aren't talked about because now you might be walking into some CEO's home or some billion-dollar owner. So the truth is, a lot of them will put quote unquote athletes down for the things that they take.
Mhm.
But my argument is they're taking things, whether you agree or not, to better their lives, to take care of their families. We have another group of people who are taking drugs that are even more deadlier for recreational reasons or just to feel good. There's never been a person who died for overdosing on a steroid. You might have complications later on in life, but you will not die. You can die from taking a certain amount of alcohol. You can die from taking cocaine. You can die from taking meth. Listen, even aspirin, something
Yep.
that's sold over the counter, you can die from taking too much of that. You can die from taking too much sugar. You can die from drinking so much alcohol within a certain amount of time. You'll literally die. So when you ask that, which is actually really more dangerous if we
Mhm.
really want to talk about just drugs overall? Every time I've ever done an interview, and I'm really, really good friends with Victor Conti, and
Yep.
I just got contacted by every news media around the world to talk about him and everything like that. But I remember, and I'll be careful in saying this. I remember him telling me that. Yeah, I think I want to talk about that story. I,
Okay.
I think I'll leave
Well,
that
just
one out
going
there.
off of that whole topic, I mean, you live in Vegas. How many cigar whiskey bars are there in Vegas? And those, for a known fact, will kill you a lot quicker. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, really, but
Yeah.
if you consistently smoke cigars and drink whiskey,
Well,
that's going to happen.
whiskey. Yeah, whiskey. You can take a certain amount in certain hours and die from alcohol poison.
You're right.
Yeah, cigars. Yeah, it will
If you're
take a
smoking a
while.
cigar and doing, 5 or 6 whiskeys a night, your liver in a couple of years is not going to like you very much.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a whole nother thing. what's more dangerous? I remember, when alcohol came out, the prohibition, it was a bad thing. The government, went against you. The cities went against you, tried to put you in jail and prison. So if it was really that bad, why do they sell it everywhere now? Is it just that they figured out a way to be able to tax it? Let's
Yeah.
talk about how many people that are in prison for selling marijuana. Oh my God. I mean, but marijuana had a bad stigma. Now, damn near every state you go to, marijuana is free. It makes you wonder, like, why are these guys still in prison selling, doing life where they're, they're they sold a drug that's actually legal now. So, you know, um, I'll end it with this. I remember always thinking, they talk about drugs, but one of the biggest cliches in the world that's been used in movies and everything else is take two aspirins and call me in the morning. And basically they're saying, take these two drugs. Hopefully they'll help you. Don't bother me. So we just live in a drug infested world. We live in
No,
a
that's
drug
no
infested,
doubt about that.
country. I mean, just the things that's going on with fentanyl and all that stuff is just, it's just killing people and changing lives. So I can't just talk about sports technology drugs when
Right.
there's worse drugs that are out there.
I
Yeah,
guess topic for us today, though, is you and I both been professional athletes, and I guess really weighing out the pros and cons versus just jumping into something,
yeah,
especially at specific ages. I mean, you yourself said you started at 19, but in hindsight, there are things you're going through now. Even if you didn't have the other health issues, you would be going through. Just from age alone, you'd probably be going through some of it. But
yeah,
um, what are some of the, I mean, with age, male or female, your hormone profile changes as you get older because we're
yes,
depreciable products. We're really not supposed to live to 100 years old. You go back 100 years from today, our life expectancy was in the mid 40s,
mm,
right? So we're supposed to get past puberty, start having kids in our late teens, early 20s. Hopefully they get to the point where they can take care of themselves before we get to our 40s, because most of us were going to die by that time.
yeah,
Now we're living longer, and we're seeing what happens when you live longer. And for men, testosterone levels just naturally decline with age. Now we also know that if you performance enhance with exogenous testosterone, you shut down your own natural production to begin with. So if you're doing that in your 20s, when you should be just, your typical 25-year-old is just, hormone
raging,
out anyway.
yeah,
Now we're taking it up, we're doubling them out in the system, but we're also telling the system to shut. Naturally, you don't, I'm getting extra, you don't need to work anymore.
yeah,
If we do that
yeah. I
long
mean,
enough.
I've been brutally honest about that. I started at a young age, and you know, um, it's when I retired from the sport. Um, I stopped using just immediately. I had health problems, so I just quit. And I remember having to go get my testosterone, and it was 71. And
Oh, wow.
I didn't really understand that. And I was like, well, I'm good, doc. I don't plan on competing. I don't care about muscle. And he's like, no, you don't understand. There's a lot of health problems that comes along with having, testosterone that low. And my son Darius, I think, was only like maybe, you know, um, 5 or 6 years old, and they're like, literally, your son has a higher testosterone than you do. So I had to start hormone replacement, and then I have to do that for the rest of my life. So you're right. It's evolution that as you get older, your hormones don't put out as much. Everybody, knows about menopause, but that's just the same thing in women, that happens to them. So yeah, that's going to naturally happen. And yeah, some of us, we push our limits and it comes a lot quicker. But I will say, I know we have different beliefs, but biblically, people you live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years back, and they were meant to live, and never die. And it was because of a sin that was committed that, God said, I can't live with you guys that long. But people lived up to 700 years old. There's documents about it. But, you know, this is one thing I understand, and I've said this a million times. Every generation is a weaker version of a man. You go back to the men's, back into the 1900s, just what they were able to endure. You go back to, to the biblical days when they walked miles and miles and miles with no food, no water. Their ability to navigate. You look at, the Empire State Building being built, and there's no guardrails or anything like that, or nets, and they're eating their lunch just sitting there swinging off of off of the guardrails, hundreds of feet up in the air. Men can't do that now. We don't have the ability to do that now. So I've always felt that, and I know there's been studies. Each generation of men is a weaker version, and there's been a bit of an epidemic that, women are being empowered to be more manlier, yet men are becoming weaker. So at the end of the day, hormonal wise, yes, you're going to have to probably be in a category of where you're going to have to use some type of hormone replacement. For men, it happens anywhere from the age of 40, where your testosterone really starts plummeting. And the problem about it is a lot of men don't talk about that. We don't talk about, like, man, I don't feel as strong, or I've been depressed, or I don't have the sexual drive or performance that I did when I was younger. That's just something that we don't talk about. Women talk about everything. But I remember it was years ago when they started doing all these low T commercials, and they gave
Mhm.
that word low T, kind of made it cool, kind of made it cool to be able to talk about. But all they're talking about is what's been going on forever. So that's, I think, now why you have an epidemic of all these different hormone replacement centers all over the world, because every man is going to have to deal with that. And women, I know some women who are going through menopause who have to have testosterone. Some of them do, like, the hip pellet, where it's in their hip and it slowly delivers a certain amount of testosterone over for years. But so it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Right. Just to name off some of the issues that can come up with low testosterone in men, obviously decreased muscle mass and strength. That's something people might be able to live with, or it's not a big issue. But reduced bone density is a problem
Yeah,
for everybody.
yeah,
Increased risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease as well. So there's a lot of things, and men can actually start to express or uh, experience hot flashes also later in age if their test is too low. So, but the big ones there: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and bone density. If your testosterone is too low, and again, let's say if you're one of the many Instagram influencers out there that are starting to use stuff in their late teens, let's say if you stop in your 30s, was that about the time you retired the first time?
no, I retired. I was in my late 30s,
Okay,
when I
so
retired.
I
Yeah,
mean it's going to naturally happen anyway, but now you stop cold turkey, it's just going to, like it did with you, it's going to plummet.
yeah, yeah. And,
But that's
and
the
there, go
sorry,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, and there's certain men out there that will break those laws. Just like in sports, there's certain people out here
Yeah.
that are just naturally beasts. They're the natural was it mesomorphs of the world, who are just naturally muscular. I remember Goes Demo was a guy. He was in his early 50s, and he would go and get his testosterone checked, and it was still in the 800s. And I'm like, what? But he's like, man, I feel great. I'm still active. I still perform the same way.
Mhm.
But that's a very small percentage. Just
Yeah.
like there's a very small percentage that figure out what they're actually meant to do in the
Well, that's
world.
the Michael Jordan effect.
Yeah, yeah. And the even worse part about it is, like, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe's, the Larry Birds, they not only figured out what sport they were great at, you could not work them.
No.
The Ronnie Colemans, you could not outwork those guys. So they didn't live just off of their genetics. They also had a pedigree about them, and
Yeah.
a
Well,
mentality about them.
it's up here.
Yeah,
But the bigger thing for me though is I have all daughters. You have daughters. Um, on the men's side of things, there's medical science now where you can reverse some of these things, right? So there is TRT to take that effect. But if you're a 19, 17, 18, 19-year old girl that has decided to jump on gear,
hmm
um, there are going to be changes right off the bat that are not reversible.
yeah,
I mean, there's all kinds of performance issues or reasons why you might do it, right? There might be a physique competition. You could be a shock putter or a heptathlete or like I'm going to pull up Neely's picture again. She was a fighter and she would not get fights right there. She was 19-year-old, 100% natural at the time. I remember when you went to one of her training sessions, you're like, look at her shoulders, look at her calves.
Yeah. Muscularity is insane. Yeah.
Right. And it's genetics obviously involved there, but had she gone on something at that point, it gone behind my back, that's going to be, I mean, that's irreversible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And the thing about women, unlike men, they truly, truly care about their skin. They truly, truly care about their hair. And those are some immediate things that actually
Oh,
happens. Their
voice.
skin starts to change. Their it starts to get thicker and more leather. Their hair starts to thin out and get brittle. But probably two of the major things that are irreversible is one, their voice immediately starts to drop, and the other is a certain body part that grows that's affected also
Right.
by that I'm just not willing to say, but I think anyone who knows what I'm talking about, or any woman
Right.
that's listening
Well,
knows what I'm talking about.
I know you've told quite a few on our side of things, physique competitors, to go look at yourself naked in the mirror and tell me things haven't changed.
Yeah.
And if you're happy about this.
Yeah, yeah. And there are some. I mean, there are
Oh,
some that are happy and comfortable about it. And what can you say about that? I mean, I know some guys back when I competed, they would be like, man, if I won the Olympia and just did a crap pose and died on stage right there, I'd be in heaven. I'm like, that's not where you're gonna be, bro. And I've always said, our sport of bodybuilding is amazing. It's a sport to live for, not to die for. Again, bodybuilding, I think you can't do anything in life, absolutely anything, without coming into our world. Even if you're just trying to grow old and keep your muscle mass, you have to come into the gym. You have to do some type of resistance training. If you're a professional athlete, you have to come in to the gym and do some type of resistance training. You see a lot of professionals that will actually emulate a bodybuilding pose when they win their shows. Usain Bolt doing the one pose. See most boxers, they do a double bicep on stage.
not well.
Yeah, none of them really do it well. So they're giving accolades to our sports. Actors and actresses come into our world to get better for a movie. So our sport is the birthplace of all sports. We can make all sports better, but I don't gotta go and swim. I don't have to play baseball or football to get better in my own sport. All I have to do is continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, any words of wisdom to the young ladies thinking about it?
Yeah, that's just really difficult.
Because Victor was, I
First,
mean, we threw Victor Conti's name out there. He was able to scientifically work with some very, very, very high level female athletes. I mean, there was gold medal Olympians
yeah,
um, that I don't know about the certain body parts if they changed at all because we didn't get pictures of that.
yeah,
But they were never really accused of any kind of other virilization. You didn't see anything with facial hair or voice changes because I mean, the majority of the track athletes, they still sounded like they did when they were in college.
yeah, yeah. And the thing about that is, Victor only worked with elite proven athletes anyway.
Right.
He was very, very technical about the certain amounts that he would give out. He was very technical about the blood work and having blood work done multiple times. So he was on top of that. But man, it's just to answer that question, Greg. While I have tremendous mixed feelings about it, I think probably one, you should talk to a pro athlete in your sport that you want to do, and to one who's honest about the ups and downs of what she went through. Um, you know, you got to be comfortable with knowing that there's going to be some things that it's going to happen to you that's going to be absolutely irreversible. Are you going
Yeah.
to be okay with that? Are you going to be okay with the possibility of not being able to have kids because of certain things that happen?
Mhm.
So it's not a fair world when it comes to that, and men being able to do it. But again, men are taking men hormones, women are taking, men hormones. And I'll just leave you with this. Even if a man just take progesterone just a little bit every day, what happens? So what do women think is going to happen when they take more than just a little bit?
Yeah. Performance enhancement
What's going
level.
to happen to them? So I think you just really have to weigh um, you really have to weigh the pros and cons of that. And I think at the end of the day, you need to be comfortable with whatever happens. If you make it, if you're able to make money, if you're not able to make money, you really have to be comfortable with the pros and cons that you're going to have to deal with, for the rest of your life. For the
Right.
rest of your life.
Well, I know I read a study on, they asked retired successful athletes if, with everything that came with it, the good and the bad, would they do it all over again the same way? And I think it was almost 100%. Even Muhammad Ali talked about with Parkinson's and everything else. Would you change a thing? He said no, including when he refused to go to Vietnam and lost years of his career,
Yeah.
which was a negative in his career.
Yeah.
I know for myself, being medically retired from fighting because of concussions. I remember having dinner with my family, and it was one of those times when my hands were shaking uncontrollably.
Mm.
We were drinking, and my dad looked over at my daughter, because that was when she was, beginning her career. She was 2-0 at that point. Are you giving it second thoughts? And she said no, like not even a hesitation. And then I remember thinking, would I have done anything differently? And I don't think I would have. So I don't know. Would
Yeah.
you have done anything differently?
No, I've said this, multiple times on different podcasts and just private interviews with people. You know, the best and the worst thing about me was me. I was absolutely the best thing that could have ever happened to me of being an athlete, and I was actually the worst thing. I wouldn't change anything. And I know, let's get into this. I know that a lot of people think, me losing my leg had to do with me taking certain drugs. I know what a lot of people think me having a kidney transplant was due to taking certain drugs. And, like I said before, I wish that was true, because then I wouldn't have to worry about my kids going through what I went through. And I think it's been proven. There's been a lot of medical studies released on me, but I still know there's a lot of idiots out there that believe that. But regardless, I wouldn't change absolutely nothing that I've been through. My horrible childhood, um, my career in fighting, um, the good and bad things that I did as a fighter, as a professional athlete, the good and bad things that I did, and as a pro athlete, um, going through having a kidney transplant, having amazing surgeries, losing my leg, losing a lot of my ability in my lower back, all the dark times that I've had with suicidal thoughts and depression and all that. I wouldn't change a thing, because I wouldn't be the person sitting here in front of you. I know a lot of times people will say, I wish I knew back then what I know now, but that could have changed your whole trajectory on life
Yeah.
and what you achieved. There is no going back. I don't even think a person should wish that they can go back and do something different, because you don't know that things are going to turn out to be the way that you think they're going to be, because you have more knowledge. So no, I wouldn't. And I'm solid on that. I'm so
No.
comfortable with that. I don't think about what if or anything like that. I truly understand that every good and bad thing that I've been through brought me to being the man that I am now, and I wouldn't actually change a thing about that.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say is, and originally we were going to bring up a few specific people that are very well-known influencers on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and they will learn what happens later because we don't know
Yeah.
truthfully.
Yeah.
But I know that the way I look at it is that everything that your life has been now will help you make the decisions that you're going to make moving forward, and those are yours to make. But afterwards, everything that happens is yours to live with.
Yeah.
I think that's the
Yeah.
best way to put it.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, that's like you said, the interview with all the professional athletes, they're professional. They were like the one percenters, you know.
Yeah.
You and what you achieve, you know, you're like one of the only ones who got paid the amount of money that you got paid as a fighter. Me, like I said, I had an okay career, so you know we made the right decisions, you
Right.
know. But that's different if you were, you know, a child molester or a murderer or something like that. I could see then that you saying, "Hey, I wish my life was different and I didn't do those things." But you know, for the most part, you know, we did positive things and we affected the world in a positive way. Even in our failures, we let people know that, hey, I'm human and just like you. And you know, a lot of times people look at they idolize a certain person for what they achieved, not knowing the grit and the gory part about what they've been through. So I think, you know, it's really, really important for people who are being held high or done well in a sport or business or anything to talk about the negative things that they have to go through, because people will look at you and they'll think you're unhuman or I can never achieve that, you know, not knowing that you're just as human as they do. You know, you go through ups and downs and stuff like that, and you're then humanized. There's now a cross reference that somebody who's sitting in a small town that don't really have anything can then say, wow, they're just like me, they struggle like I do.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm just so brutally honest about all the things that I go through, because I know there's other people out there that are going through that didn't get a chance to achieve what I did, or not going to be able to. Um, so, you know, in me talking about my struggles, they can then, you know, identify to something that I've been through, and now, you know, I'm a human to them, and hopefully that inspires them to do that. So, you know,
Yeah. That was a tough one.
yeah, definitely. So there you have it, another episode of Flex for Life with my host Greg and myself, Flex Wheeler. We'll see you guys this Wednesday.